I've had a history of depression, clinical depression. I was only diagnosed with it properly in my early 20s, but it's something that I'd struggled with growing up continuously, on and off, and never really received a lot of help for it.
I was first ill with anorexia when I was 15, as a result of actually my sister having anorexia. And the trauma that brought about resulted in me not being able to eat.
For me, I have self-harmed in the past as a tool for prevention for suicide. By, making a small incision on my arm, at least I'm doing that, and at least I'm not going full 9 yards, And so in my head, it's a tool. It's an anti-suicide tool.
Because of the isolation that I felt, and the loneliness, and not being understood and not being thought of as a very worthwhile human being, I turned to self-harm as my way of dealing with the immense, emotional state that I was experiencing.
I wanted to understand what it was that I was going through. I wanted to find out whether or not it was normal to want to cut myself, or whether or not it was normal to dig my nails into my head and things like that.
Self-harm is an addictive behaviour as well. Once you've used that as a coping mechanism, it becomes something that you rely on.
It caused a rush of adrenaline. It was a good way of calming myself. It was a good way of having control over what I was doing and what was going on in my life.
I was still very much struggling with depression, and I really, I went straight back into GCSEs. After being away for a long time, away from academic studies and pressure. And the self-harming kind of started again, and just was my way of dealing with the stress of exams, with trying to fit back into a normal life.
I was being challenged from a lot of different angles. So, for example, my sister once accused me of doing it for attention, and so I spent years just cutting myself in places that my mum or my sister would never see.
Unfortunately, with an eating disorder and any other mental health condition, it's not understood, and actually I was getting in the way of them helping sick people, really sick people, and they told me that. They told me to stop being so deceiving and lying to them.
I felt. I don't know if he made me feel like that, or whether or not it was just within myself, but I felt really stupid for even going to the hospital in the first place.
The first doctor I saw was actually really helpful. She said, what, you're depressed. I would say that the cause of your eating disorders and everything else was probably depression, and it's been underlying, and nobody has picked up on it.
I said to her, I really don't want to be here, and I feel like I'm wasting your time, and you should be dealing with someone who's a lot more unwell than I am. And she was so sweet. I just felt like I was actually being listened to, and I was actually being dealt with, not as a statistic, not as an attention seeker, but as a human being who's clearly very, very unwell.
There are so many misconceptions, and they're dangerous, because actually what those misconceptions do is that they encourage people to have opinions, and those opinions that aren't based on fact and aren't true actually start to gain gain weight in their value, and people start to think actually this is true. Eating disorders are about teenage girl issues and vanity, and self-harm is just part of a kind of a gothic subculture. All of these they're lies, and they're really poisonous lies, and actually I think the word stigma doesn't show how dangerous they are, because actually it's preventing people from coming forward and talking about it and getting help.
You're not actually ever going to understand your patients unless you actually get to know them, and unless you actually see them as individuals, because ultimately with something like self-harm anyway, the reason why I self-harm is completely different from the reason that someone else would self-harm.
We all have experience of mental health. We don't, it's not good mental health or bad mental health. We run the length of that throughout our lives, and actually looking into yourself and thinking, where have I been in an experience like this? Yes, I have, and actually using that to really understand that person and what they're dealing with.
I've gone through it, and I'm alive, and I'm happily married, and you know, I'm progressing in lots of different ways. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
If one thing can come from me talking about it, I hope that it's to encourage other people to think, you know, I'm not alone. There are other people. Recovery is possible, and there are a lot of people who are passionate about getting mental health talked about.
I really look forward to a time where young people can actually just come forward and be honest and open about what they're going through without it being looked down on for it. I'm very hopeful for that time.